The air in the observation deck always tasted the same. A faint metallic tang, endlessly recycled, a stark contrast to the volatile atmosphere swirling beneath them. Designation: Earth. Known throughout the galactic catalog as a Class Omega Deathworld, its very atmosphere hostile, its flora toxic, its fauna uniformly predatory. The mission of the xenological survey vessel, the Dauntless Inquiry, was clear: observe and classify the evolutionary anomaly that was humanity. How had they survived, much less thrived, on such a planet? On their primary display, a live feed shimmered, focused on a landmass writhing under tectonic strain. A jagged, smoking peak, crimson rivers of magma flowing freely down its flanks, pulsed with terrifying energy. The ship's automated systems flagged extreme heat, noxious gases, and imminent explosive events, yet there they were, a small group of bipeds, clad in vibrant, non-protective coverings, walking casually up the slope. A female biped even paused near a fissure spewing incandescent rock, pulling out a small, flat device, extending her arm and tilting her head. A light flared from the device. What in the void are they doing? Ambassador Zylar's optical sensors narrowed, struggling to process the visual. Their biometrics show elevated heart rates, yes, but no sign of distress, no panic. In fact, a physiological marker consistent with amusement? The screen flickered, shifting continents, snapping to another extreme event. Now, an immense tempest, a swirling vortex of wind and water, screamed across an ocean. The sensors shrieked warnings of Category 5 force winds, waves taller than any non-aquatic creature. Yet, a tiny dot, barely discernible, became clearer amidst the chaos. A human. On a board. Not fleeing, not seeking shelter, but somehow, impossibly, gracefully riding the crest of a monstrous wave that threatened to swallow their entire vessel if encountered at close range. They twisted, turned, immersed themselves in the furious churn, emerging from the spray with what the AI interpreted as ecstatic shouts. "They're playing in it," murmured Cathar, the lead xenobotanist, his multi-jointed digits tapping a frantic rhythm on his data slate. "This is beyond resilience. This is an embrace of their own demise." Another feed materialized, cutting through the tempestuous scene. This time, the focus was on fauna. A massive apex predator, fangs the length of a human limb, rippled with muscle, a low growl vibrating through the ship's audio pickups. It was clearly agitated, its predatory eyes fixated on the human. This creature, a terrestrial carnivore known for its lightning speed and bone-crushing bite, was a certified killer. And a human stood right beside it, an arm casually slung around its neck, holding that same small, flat device, grinning directly into it, as the creature's growl deepened. The human then patted the beast's head, before waving goodbye. "This cannot be right," Zylar articulated, his voice a low hum of pure bewilderment. "Our intelligence suggested a species forged in the fires of necessity, adapting, surviving against overwhelming odds. But this is not adaptation. This is an active courting of disaster. It lacks all logical evolutionary purpose." They had come to understand the Deathworld designation. It was terrifyingly accurate, but the why of human survival, their bizarre relationship with inherent danger, it defied all galactic biological theory. There was no evolutionary advantage to seeking out terminal threats, to casually mocking the forces that should, by all rights, have extinguished them millennia ago. Their data banks processed probabilities, resilience factors, adaptation scores. All pointed to one inescapable, horrifying conclusion. Humans did not simply adapt to their death world. The ship's primary monitors flashed again, tearing through the data streams like a hungry predator. This time, the focus wasn't on fire or storm, but on the relentless, invisible grip of Earth's gravity. Their sensors had registered repeated, inexplicable rapid descents from extreme altitudes, followed by equally baffling decelerations. Commander Varrock clacked his mandibles in confusion. Are they malfunctioning? or ejecting waste. Then the visuals cleared. A speck, barely visible against the dizzying blue of the sky, detached from a larger flying craft. It plummeted. Faster and faster, wind tearing at the biped's form. The air screamed with unseen forces. For agonizing moments, the human was nothing more than a falling stone, a victim to a planet that relentlessly pulled everything downwards. But then, a sudden blossoming of fabric, a vibrant splash of color against the immense canvas of the sky. The descent slowed, dramatically. The human drifted, casually, for several minutes before landing on a patch of green, then immediately collapsing their parachute and walking away, grinning. They willingly launched themselves from such heights, Ambassador Zilar articulated, his optical sensors flickering with disbelief. And derive satisfaction from it? From the sensation of falling to their inevitable doom, only to avert it at the last possible moment. As if to answer, another feed activated. This time, humans weren't falling. They were climbing. A sheer, vertical rock face hundreds of meters high offered almost no purchase. The air was thin up there, the wind a constant, chilling force. Yet, two humans, tethered by flimsy-looking ropes, meticulously ascended. Hands grasped at barely their indentations. Feet found purchase on slivers of rock. One false move, one slip, and gravity would claim them without mercy. The aliens watched, transfixed, as one human, halfway up, paused, looked down at the vast, yawning chasm below, and simply shrugged. A moment later, they pulled themselves over a ledge, cheering. Cathar, the xenobotanist, had ceased tapping his data slate entirely. His multiple eyes were wide. They are not fleeing gravity's embrace. They are challenging it, taunting it even. They expend immense energy to ascend, only to hurl themselves back down. Or they ascend, inch by painful inch, for no apparent reward beyond simply reaching the top. The sheer audacity, the pointlessness of it all, was staggering. Every other species encountered understood gravity as an immovable force, a fundamental constant dictating caution and movement. Humans treated it like a personal adversary, a game to be played, a thrill to be had. They sought out the very conditions that should have obliterated them. It wasn't survival instinct. It was defiance. A bizarre, illogical, infuriating defiance. They didn't just live on a death world. They actively courted death, then scoffed when it failed to claim them. The dauntless Inquiry atmospheric sensors, having cataloged the raw, untamed chaos of Earth's surface, now registered a new, perplexing environment. Not the choking sulfur of a volcano, nor the brine-soaked fury of a hurricane. This was different. An odd, clinical scent permeated the localized air samples, a sharp, almost aggressive cleanliness, acrid with sterilizing agents, yet undercut by something else, something subtle but pervasive. Something the xenopsychological processors registered as a deep, primal current of fear. On the main view screen, a sprawling structure of gleaming, antiseptic white and pale blue dominated a quiet urban sector. Inside, the visual feed zoomed past automated doors, revealing long corridors illuminated by harsh, shadowless light. Every surface was scrubbed, disinfected, almost aggressively devoid of the planet's rampant life. No rich soil, no wild green, no teeming insects. Yet life was everywhere here. And death waited, unseen, insidious, but ever-present. Ambassador Zylar's optical sensors narrowed. The readings indicate a severely compromised biological environment within that structure. High concentrations of pathogens, virulent and active, despite the meticulous cleanliness, and pervasive stress signals from the inhabitants. Emotional markers of anxiety, sorrow, but also fierce resolve. They watched. Humans lay in partitioned bays, pale and vulnerable, connected by intricate webs of transparent tubing and fine wires to complex machines that pulsed and whirred with monotonous rhythm. Their faces, often pale and occasionally contorted, spoke volumes even without direct translation. Fear, yes, but also a stubborn, fragile hope that burned in their weary eyes. A human medical practitioner, clad in sterile coverings, masks obscuring half their face, gloves covering their hands, moved with quiet, practiced efficiency. They approached a patient whose life signs flickered precariously on an adjacent monitor. A sudden, piercing flatline alarm blared, slicing through the artificial quiet. Panic flared in the room. Other humans, similarly clad, rushed in, their voices urgent, guttural commands cutting through the rising tension. "Clear!" one voice bellowed, raw with adrenaline, before a sudden, violent jolt pulsed through the prone body. The patient's back arched, a spasm of pure pain and mechanical intervention. The aliens, programmed for logical extinction, braced for immediate termination, but then the flatline shifted. A jagged, weak rhythm emerged. A beat. Another. A stuttering, defiant return. "They are actively fighting internal threats," Cathar whispered, his voice a dry rustle of disbelief. "Not just external ones. They cultivate environments of near-total sterility to house their sick and dying, prolonging existence in the face of microscopic, insidious predators that originate within their own forms." Commander Varrock extended a sensor probe, attempting to grasp the medical procedures, the bewildering array of chemical compounds, surgical tools, and biological warfare waged on a cellular level. They inflict pain to stave off permanent cessation. They induce unconsciousness. They cut into their own kind. All for the chance of a few more Earth rotations? This is not logical. Why such effort to preserve a single failing organism? The human practitioner, sweating under the sterile lights, leaned over the revived patient. A small, almost imperceptible squeeze of a hand. A quiet, "You're with us. Stay with us." The patient, barely conscious, gave a weak, watery nod. The fear in the room hadn't vanished, but something else had joined it. A quiet, fierce determination. They had observed humans defying volcanoes, hurricanes, and apex predators. But here, in this antiseptic fortress against the invisible enemy, humans defied something far more fundamental, the inevitability of their own biology. The dauntless inquiry drifted silently, far from Earth's tumultuous surface, positioning itself for a new kind of observation. Here, the vacuum was absolute. The cold, truly cosmic, could flash freeze unprotected flesh in an instant. Radiation levels were lethal. This, by every conceivable metric, was the ultimate Deathworld. The void itself, uncaring, infinite, utterly hostile to organic life. The ship's systems hummed with a quiet apprehension, a stark contrast to the casual attitude of the lifeforms they observed. On the main screen, a human habitat, a sprawling metallic lattice, spun gently. Tiny, brightly colored figures, encased in bulky suits, floated just outside. They weren't contained within a craft, no. These bipeds were outside, tethered by thin lines, carrying out what the AI classified as routine maintenance. One human, designated Subject Theta-7, was manipulating a recalcitrant panel, muttering under their breath, "You stubborn piece of junk." The comms translation crackled through the observation deck speakers, tinged with static. "Just snap into place." A sudden, sharp clang, a tool, a metallic wrench, slipped from Theta-7's gloved grasp. It tumbled, slowly, majestically, towards the infinite blackness, destined to become cosmic debris. Ambassador Zilar's optical sensors widened. They lost a critical instrument. In the vacuum. At such velocity, recovery is illogical and highly dangerous. Subject THETA-7 paused, a visible sag to their shoulders. Then, a sigh, a sound amplified and translated, conveying a weariness born of annoyance, not fear. "Aw, come on, not again, Bob." They pushed off the station's hull, a deliberate, slow movement, launching themselves after the tool. Their tether stretched, then snapped taut. The other human, Subject Delta-4, merely shook their head, A faint chuckle, audible over the comms. "Careful, Theta," Delta 4 advised, their voice calm, almost bored. "Don't want to go chasing that thing all the way to KEPLER 186F. Theta 7, now drifting precariously close to the untethered wrench, extended an arm, grabbed it with a deft snag, and then, with a practiced motion, pulled themselves back towards the station using their tether. "Got it. See? Told you Bob always comes back. He's a good boy, just gets excited sometimes." They secured the tool, then, inexplicably, paused. They turned, gazing out at the star-dusted velvet beyond the station. A hand, still gloved, instinctively rose, as if to touch something invisible. "They do this often?" Commander Varrock articulated, his voice a low hum of pure bewilderment. "Deliberately expose themselves to the hard vacuum? They lack the natural resilience for it. Their suits are fragile. A single puncture, a micrometeorite, instantaneous decompression and death." Cathar, the xenobotanist, scrolled through new data, his multi-jointed digits flying. "They call these spacewalks. Not for necessity alone, but for contemplation. They describe the void as beautiful. They paint its darkness. They write poems about its silence. The human, Theta 7, finally returned to their task, humming a tuneless melody, the mundane sound stark against the terrifying silence of space. They were working in an environment that should crush them, boil their blood, freeze their very essence. Yet, they hummed. They made jokes. They expressed fondness for a tool they named Bob. The aliens had come to Earth expecting to witness a species brutally honed by its hostile environment. They had found humans hiking volcanoes for fun, surfing hurricanes for kicks, and wrestling with their own internal mortality with fierce medical tenacity. Now, they saw them treating the ultimate void like a backyard, a place for work, for quiet moments, for a casual chase after a dropped wrench. It wasn't defiance anymore. It was something far stranger, far more ingrained. They hadn't just adapted to danger. They had somehow, inexplicably, learned to live with it. The ship's environmental readouts screamed warnings, not the volatile chemical soup of a volcano, nor the liquid fury of a hurricane. This was different. A dry, crushing heat shimmered off vast ochre landscapes. The air itself was a thin, abrasive slurry, loaded with microscopic particles of iron-rich soil, a fine crimson dust that seemed to seep into everything. The dauntless Inquiry's atmospheric filtration systems struggled, a persistent, irritating whir accompanying the ingress of the gritty particles. On the main viewer, a stark, breathtaking panorama stretched, towering mesas, jagged spires, and endless rolling dunes, all painted in shades of fiery orange and deep red. Life here was sparse, brutal and tenacious. Yet, across this parched, unforgiving terrain, humans moved. Not in heavily armored vehicles, not seeking shade, but on foot. A small group, bodies exposed to the relentless sun, their skin already browned and leathery. Their core temperatures are dangerously elevated. Ambassador Xylar's optical sensors blinked rapidly. Hydration levels plummeting. The ground temperature alone would induce severe epidermal damage in most known species. Why do they subject themselves to this prolonged torment? One human, a male, stumbled, his foot sinking into loose, burning sand. He let out a choked gasp, quickly followed by a short, dry laugh. He straightened, wiped a hand across his forehead, leaving a streak of crimson grime, and took a long swig from a battered metallic flask. "Almost there, guys," he rasped, his voice hoarse, but a flicker of a smile played on his lips. "Just another 15 clicks to the ghost town. Promise there's cold soda." Cathar, the lead xenobotanist, had shifted from bewilderment to a sort of morbid fascination. They are tracking across this desolate expanse for a sweetened, carbonated liquid? A reward for suffering? His multi-jointed digits tapped nervously. This habitat offers almost nothing in terms of sustenance. Only harsh sunlight, abrasive winds, and creatures uniquely adapted to deliver swift, agonizing death via venom. Indeed, the ship's bioscanners pinged. Beneath a rock overhang, a coiled serpentine creature, its scales the color of the very dust around it, twitched. Its venom, according to the database, was a potent neurotoxin, The humans, however, seemed oblivious. They passed within meters of the creature's hidden lair, their heavy boots crunching on the dusty ground. The male who had stumbled even paused, leaning against a sun-baked rock, adjusting his pack. He squinted at the horizon, a faint heat haze distorting his view. "You know, for a Deathworld, this place really knows how to put on a show," he murmured, less to his companions and more to himself, a strange, almost fond tone in his voice. He took out his ubiquitous flat device and, impossibly, aimed it at the vast, desolate landscape, angling for a picture. Commander Virok extended a sensor probe, trying to fathom the psychology. They weren't trapped here. They chose this. They welcomed the grit in their teeth, the burn of the sun, the aching in their bones. They were not merely surviving. They were Khan come ter experiencing. And somehow, in that experience, they found a strange, inexplicable joy. They pushed through the oppressive heat, the endless dust, not because they had to, but because they simply would not stop. Their stubbornness was a force as relentless as the desert itself. The ship's external sensors, usually barraged by the cacophony of Earth's volatile ecosystems, the roar of volcanoes, the shriek of hurricanes, the incessant hum of human cities, now registered something else entirely. A profound, almost spiritual absence. The sound dampeners on the Dauntless Inquiry struggled to find anything to dampen. This wasn't just quiet. It was a vast, crushing silence, punctuated only by the whine of galactic winds far above and the infinitesimal creak of shifting ice far below. On the main view screen, a new panorama unfolded. Endless, stark white. Glacial peaks pierced a pale, weak sun. Deep blue crevasses carved jagged lines across a frozen sea. The air temperature registered magnitudes below anything considered survivable for most carbon-based life. Oxygen content was thin, razor-sharp. It was a world entirely stripped bare, an indifferent monument to planetary forces. And yet, tiny figures moved across its face. Ambassador Zylar's optical sensors narrowed. Their core temperatures are plummeting. Their extremities exhibit signs of frostbite, despite their specialized coverings. They are expending immense energy merely to maintain cellular function. This is an environment designed for absolute stillness, not habitation. Two humans, bundled in layers of insulated fabric, their faces almost entirely obscured by goggles and balaclavas, trudged across a windswept plateau of ice. Their heavy boots crunched rhythmically, the only sound breaking the immense quiet. Each breath they exhaled plumed into thick, white clouds that dissolved instantly into the frigid air. One human, a female, paused, leaning heavily on a trekking pole. A faint tremor ran through her body, a visible shiver even through the thick suit. "You okay, Jess?" The male voice crackled through their helmet comms, a low, steady sound. "Just admiring the view, Mark," Jess replied, her voice slightly muffled, but a hint of something unreadable. "Awe?" in her tone. She slowly turned her head, surveying the endless, pristine expanse, the distant, shimmering ice formations. The silence seemed to press in on them, a physical weight. Cathar, the lead xenobotanist, vibrated his sensory stalks. They are voluntarily entering this frozen tomb. No natural flora can survive here, save for microbial extremophiles. No fauna, beyond the most specialized, dare venture. Yet they traverse it in full knowledge of the lethal conditions for the simple act of observation. Mark reached out, his thick glove barely brushing Jess's shoulder. "Another hour, maybe less. Just gotta push past this ridge." Suddenly the ship's subsurface scanners flared. A deep, resonant crack echoed through the alien vessel's audio pickups, though the humans themselves showed no outward reaction, seemingly oblivious to the seismic groan of the immense glacier beneath their feet. A spiderweb of fractures began to spread, slowly, inexorably, across the ice, several meters ahead of them. This was the Earth itself, shifting, breaking, ready to swallow them whole. The aliens watched, breath held, expecting panic, a frantic retreat. Instead, Mark simply pointed. "Mind that, Jess. Looks a bit fresh." Jess peered ahead, then nodded. "Right, bit of a detour then. Keeps things interesting. No fear, no terror. A mild, almost jovial acknowledgement of the planet's intent to consume them. They adjusted their course, carefully navigating the nascent fissures, their footsteps methodical, unhurried. The symphony of silence around them seemed to mock the aliens, desperate warnings, to amplify the sheer, baffling casualness of humanity. They weren't fighting the cold or the ice. They were simply walking through it, treating the monumental forces of a Deathworld not as a threat to be overcome, but as a minor inconvenience, a slight detour on their journey to nowhere in particular. They didn't just endure the silence. They made it their companion. The ship's environmental sensors screamed, not with alarm at immediate danger, but with something far more insidious. A pervasive, cloying odor permeated the localized atmospheric samples, the heavy, sweet scent of decay. Not a sharp, acrid decomposition, but a rich, almost sickly sweet exhalation of rot, of vibrant life collapsing back into the earth. Mixed with it was the thick, humid breath of 1,000 unseen organisms, damp earth, and something vaguely metallic. On the main viewer, a vision of overwhelming green dominated. A jungle, dense and suffocatingly humid, where light struggled to penetrate the canopy. Every surface dripped, every branch teemed with unseen life, and the ground itself was a treacherous sucking bog. The dauntless Inquiry's biohazard warnings flared constantly, flagging countless pathogenic bacteria, virulent fungi, and insects carrying a cocktail of diseases. This was a biological battlefield, a place where life devoured life with relentless efficiency. Their external bioreadings indicate immediate risk of dermal infection, respiratory compromise, and systemic infestation, Ambassador Xylar articulated, his optical sensors flickering with barely suppressed revulsion. The humidity alone would induce severe dehydration and organ strain, yet they proceed. Two humans clad in lightweight, mud-stained clothing waded through knee-deep, murky water, their boots squelched with every step, sucking noisily at the viscous muck. Clouds of buzzing insects swarmed around them, occasionally drawing a casual swat to the neck or arm. The air was so thick it felt like breathing soup. Smells like victory. A female human, her face glistening with sweat, said with a wry grin to her companion, wiping a bead of moisture from her brow. She held a machete, its blade glinting dully, using it to hack away at a tangled vine that blocked their path. More like expired cheese and regret. Her male companion grumbled back, though a faint smile touched his lips. He stumbled, catching himself on a rotting log that disintegrated beneath his hand. He merely shook his head, pulling his hand free, covered in dark, sticky residue. "Think we're almost to that orchid, Lena?" Kafar, the xenobotanist, vibrated his sensory stalks in utter disbelief. They are seeking out a specific canopic flowering plant in this biohazard zone? A plant with no discernible nutritional or immediate practical value? They endure this miasma for aesthetics? As if to highlight the absurdity, a flash of iridescent color darted through the gloom. A creature, identified by the ship's database as a poison dart frog, its skin secreting potent neurotoxins, landed on a leaf mere centimeters from Lena's hand. She glanced at it, her expression unconcerned, then carefully reached past it to examine a delicate mottled bloom on a nearby branch. "Ah, there you are," she whispered almost affectionately to the orchid. Commander Varrock extended a sensor probe. Baffled, they actively courted environments designed to break down organic matter, to reclaim life into the soil. They breathed its noxious air, touched its disease-laden surfaces, ignored its immediate, colorful warnings of death. They were not merely tolerating the discomfort, they were treating it as part of the adventure. The grime, the heat, the constant itch of unseen bites, the cloying smell of decomposition, it was all just background noise to their inexplicable quest for a flower. Humans, it seemed, didn't just survive the Deathworld. They found beauty in its most putrid corners, and considered a good story ample reward for enduring its most repugnant sensations. They chose to inhabit a realm designed for decay, transforming suffering into a strange, personal trophy. The ship's bioscanners flared again, a new threat signature emerging from the dense jungle canopy. This wasn't the pervasive rot from before, nor the unseen pathogens. This was immediate, physical, and botanical. The air itself seemed to crackle with an unseen tension, smelling not just of rich earth and decay, but of something sharper, almost metallic, like freshly drawn blood mingling with green sap. On the main viewer, the scene was a claustrophobic tangle. Vines, thick as a human arm, snaked across the path. But these weren't soft, pliant growth. Their edges glinted with crystalline sharpness, barbed with tiny obsidian-like teeth. The ship's database identified it as Vitis sanguive, or razor vine, a highly aggressive species whose leaves and stems were designed to snag and lacerate anything that brushed against it, providing it with vital nutrients from severed flesh. Their epidermal integrity is being compromised repeatedly, Ambassador Xylar articulated, his optical sensors whirring. Multiple microlacerations. Bleeding is evident. The flora is actively attacking them. The same two humans from before, Lena and Mark, now moved with a different kind of caution, but still with an alarming lack of genuine fear. Mark, leading the way, used his machete, not to clear a path, but to push aside the razor vine, a strategy that inevitably meant it dragged across his exposed forearms. A thin line of crimson bloomed on his skin, quickly smeared by jungle humidity. He hissed, not in pain but in irritation. "Careful, this stuff's extra bitey today," Mark grunted, wincing as a particularly aggressive strand caught his shoulder, tearing a small rip in his shirt and drawing more blood. He gave the offending vine a solid thwack with the flat of his machete, as if chastising a misbehaving pet. Lena, following behind, was no less exposed. A trailing vine snagged her calf, slicing through her thin trousers. She let out a small yelp, then laughed, a short, breathy sound. She reached down, picked a piece of the thorny vine off her leg, and examined the angry red scratch. "Ow! Definitely not for hugging, this one. You think it's trying to tell us something?" Cathar, the xenobotanist, vibrated his sensory stalks in a spasm of horrified fascination. "They are speaking to it. As if it possesses sentience. As if it is playing with them. The plant is engineered to inflict damage. Yet they treat its actions as a minor inconvenience, a personality quirk of the ecosystem." Indeed, they continued, they were actively getting cut, nicked, and scraped by the very environment around them. Yet their faces showed grim determination, not panic. They bled onto the jungle floor, providing the plant with the nutrients it craved, and simply kept moving. Mark paused briefly, pulling a small, sterile wipe from his pack, dabbing at a particularly deep cut on his arm. He winced again, then shrugged, stuffing the wipe back in. "Adds character," he mumbled, flexing his arm. "Probably helps with the bugs, too. Don't want to mess with a guy who's already leaking." Commander Varrock extended a sensor probe, attempting to grasp the sheer, baffling nonchalance. Other species would detour for kilometers to avoid such biological hazards. These humans walked through it, accepting the small, continuous hurts as a part of their journey. They didn't just endure the razor vine, they accepted its embrace, its caress, as if it were a natural, albeit painful element of their chosen existence. They simply moved forward, one bleeding step after another, embodying a resilience that baffled all galactic logic. The ship's external sensors shrieked. Not the familiar heat of magma, nor the tearing wind of a hurricane. This was different. The atmosphere outside was supercharged, thick with ozone, smelling faintly of burnt metal. The air crackled, not with fire, but with raw, unbridled bioelectricity. Plasma discharges, bolts of pure energy, lashed down from bruised, boiling clouds, striking the ground with earth-shattering force. Warnings of extreme voltage, instantaneous incineration, and widespread electromagnetic interference flashed across every monitor. On the main view screen, a vast flat plain stretched under a sky ripped open by a monumental thunderstorm. Lightning forked and danced, illuminating the landscape in terrifying strobe-like flashes. Yet, in the heart of this maelstrom, a human vehicle, boxy and heavily reinforced, slowly advanced. Two humans, a male and a female, were inside. But they weren't fleeing. They were actively pursuing the storm. Their biological stress levels are minimal despite the proximity to lethal energy discharges. Ambassador Zylar's optical sensors blinked in disbelief. Their vocalizations indicate excitement, a physiological response consistent with pleasure, not terror. The vehicle shuddered as a massive lightning bolt struck less than a kilometer away, momentarily blinding the aliens. Optical sensors. The thunderclap followed, a concussive boom that vibrated through the very hull of Asterix, the dauntless inquiry, even from orbit. Inside the human vehicle, the female, her face illuminated by the next brilliant flash, pressed a button on a complex camera array mounted in the roof. "Did you get that one, Mark?" "Oh man, that was close," she practically shouted over the booming aftermath, her eyes wide with exhilaration. The male, Mark, gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white, but his grin was undeniable. "Got it, Lena. Full spectrum. Look at that anvil cloud. It's beautiful." "Just a little closer. Get a shot of the mammotus clouds on the underside." He edged the vehicle forward, deeper into the storm's embrace. Cathar, the lead xenobotanist, had retreated into a tight ball, his multi-jointed digits clenching. They are seeking out the source of their potential demise. They are driving Kinchel the apex of a planetary electrical discharge event, not away from it. This is beyond illogical. It's a direct affront to every instinct of self-preservation. Another bolt, closer this time, struck a nearby transmission tower. The entire structure exploded in a shower of sparks and falling debris. The humans flinched, but then Lena let out a whoop of delight. "Did you see that?" The ionization trail was perfect. "We are nailing this storm, Mark." Commander Virok extended a sensor probe, baffled. This wasn't about survival. It was about sensation. They sought out the raw power, the blinding light, the deafening roar, not as a threat, but as a spectacle to be admired, captured, and experienced. They reveled in the very forces that could instantly reduce them to carbon ash. They didn't just endure the crackle of bioelectricity, they danced within its terrifying embrace, finding a bizarre, undeniable thrill in the storm's fury. The air inside the storm-chasing vehicle now tasted thick, metallic, not just from the recycled cabin air, but from the raw ozone that had seeped in after that last, blinding strike. Outside, the sky was a bruised, boiling mess of purple and black, constantly ripped open by violent veins of pure plasma. The dauntless inquiry, Shri. Extreme atmospheric electricity. Unsurvivable conditions. Yet, Mark and Lena, the two humans, were still grinning. "That's it, Lena. Full frame, get the plasma discharge on the next one!" Mark yelled over the rumble, his voice a tight wire of exhilaration. He nudged the heavy vehicle forward, deeper into the maw of the supercell. The rumble of the storm wasn't just overhead now. It vibrated through the very ground, a deep, guttural growl that felt alive. Then, the vehicle shuddered violently, not from thunder, but from an impact. A low, ragged snarl ripped through the air, even over the storm's fury. The aliens' primary display zoomed, revealing a massive terrestrial carnivore, a creature of immense muscle and claw, eyes burning with a primal, storm-addled fury. Its fur was matted, its breath coming in ragged gasps, and it had just slammed against the armored side of the human vehicle. The stench of ozone was now tainted with the sharp, musky odor of agitated animal, raw and wild. This creature, a known apex predator, was disoriented, perhaps terrified by the storm, and now saw the vehicle as a threat, or worse, prey. "Whoa!" Lena exclaimed, not with terror, but with wide-eyed awe. "Looks like someone's having a worse day than us. Get the side camera, Mark. It's incredible." The predator roared again, scraping immense claws down the metal plating, leaving deep gouges. The vehicle rocked. Any other species would be in full-blown panic, attempting evasive maneuvers. Mark, however, was carefully adjusting his driving, keeping just enough distance to avoid direct crushing damage, but not retreating. He was still trying to get the perfect shot. "Hold steady, Lena. I need to keep it in frame." Mark grunted, wrestling the steering wheel as the ground turned to mud under the storm's downpour. "He's beautiful. Look at the raw power. What a specimen!" Another lightning bolt cracked down, illuminating the scene in stark, horrifying detail. The predator, silhouetted against the brilliant flash, paused, shaking its massive head, its primal fear momentarily overriding its aggression. It turned its gaze, not to the humans, but to the blinding light and the rumbling sky. It was also prey here, caught in the overwhelming power of the Deathworld. "Think he's just trying to get out of the rain?" Lena mused, her voice a strange mix of scientific curiosity and genuine casual empathy. She lowered her main camera, pulling out her smaller flat device, and impossibly pointed it through the armored window towards the agitated, lethal beast. She wasn't just observing the storm, she was documenting a Deathworld encounter, a selfie with pure, raw instinct. They didn't just survive the crackle of bioelectricity or the stench of prey. They became part of it. They acknowledged the animal's fear, appreciated its raw power, and still, with baffling human stubbornness, sought to capture the moment. The line between predator, prey, and observer had utterly blurred. The ship's environmental sensors shrieked, a cacophony of new, artificial dangers. Not the raw power of nature, but the sharper, more precise reports of engineered destruction. The air samples, pulled from the atmosphere below, carried a faint, acrid scent, ozone mixed with burnt propellant, a hint of something metallic. A taste like cold iron, sharp and unforgiving, seemed to seep even into the recycled air of the observation deck. Warnings flashed across the main console, high-velocity projectiles, concussive blasts, and localized energy discharges. On the main viewer, a sprawling urban ruin, a city carved into jagged shadows and crumbling concrete, came into focus. Smoke billowed from several areas, not from volcanoes but from explosions. Figures moved through the debris, clad in tactical gear, carrying complex, angular devices that spat bursts of light and kinetic energy. This wasn't a natural Deathworld, it was a human-made one. Their biometrics show extreme exertion, elevated adrenaline, yet no indicators of genuine terror or flight response. Ambassador Zelar's optical sensors narrowed to pinpricks. They are engaged in simulated combat? Yet the potential for severe physical trauma, even fatality, is demonstrably high from their own weaponry. A human, designated Unit 3, crouched behind a collapsed wall, dust clinging to their sweat-soaked face. A high-velocity projectile, alien in origin but clearly weaponized, whizzed past their head, impacting the concrete with a showering spray of shrapnel. Unit 3 merely swore, a low, guttural word of annoyance, then chuckled. "Too close, buddy. You owe me a beer for that one," they yelled across the ruined street, not at an enemy, but at a teammate, whose own projectile fire had nearly taken their head off. Cathar, the lead xenobotanist, vibrated his sensory stalks in utter disbelief. They are fighting each other, with instruments designed for maiming or termination, and they treat it as a recreational activity. They are enjoying this. Unit 3 then pulled a small spherical object from their belt, tossed it high, and moments later a blinding flash erupted, followed by a deafening concussion that rattled the entire observation deck. Through the swirling dust and smoke, Unit 3 burst from cover, weapon raised, a wide, almost manic grin plastered across their face. "Surprise, mother FU!" The comms feed cut off as they plunged into the thickest part of the chaos. Commander Varrock extended a sensor probe, baffled. This wasn't survival against nature. This was survival against themselves, against their own meticulously crafted dangers. They embraced the metallic tang of gun smoke, the gut punch of concussive force, the chilling whisper of near death. They created their own death worlds, then plunged into them with unyielding, terrifying glee. They reveled in the very edge of oblivion, a dangerous, self-destructive game played with an astonishing, incomprehensible casualness. They didn't just survive the taste of cold iron, they savored it. The ringing in Unit 3's ears was slowly fading, replaced by the persistent, dull throb of their own pulse. The acrid scent of burnt propellant still clung to the air, mingling with the heavy, metallic tang of ozone and their own sweat. The dust, disturbed by 100 concussive blasts, drifted lazily through the ruined concrete structures, catching the weak, filtered sunlight. The simulated combat was over. The enemy eliminated. But the phantom sensations lingered, a persistent ghost in their nerves. Unit 3, still breathing heavily, leaned against a crumbling wall, their tactical gear heavy and hot. Their muscles ached, a deep, satisfying burn from exertion and evasion. A minor cut on their forearm, a souvenir from a near miss, stung faintly. It wasn't pain, not really, more like an insistent reminder. A phantom itch. "You still with us, you maniac?" A voice, slightly muffled by a helmet, cut through the quiet. It was UNIT 5, their teammate, slumping down beside them, wiping dust from their visor. "Thought for a second you were going to run right into that blast." "What, trying to get a perfect score for fastest self-elimination?" Unit 3 chuckled, a dry, ragged sound. "Nah. Just wanted to see if they'd flinch. They didn't. Tough crowd." They pulled off their helmet, revealing a grimy face streaked with sweat, eyes still bright with a strange, restless energy. The adrenaline was slowly receding, leaving behind a jittery tremor, an almost electrical hum just beneath their skin. Ambassador Zylar's optical sensors narrowed as the ship's systems monitored the humans' post-engagement biometrics. Their physiological responses indicate a slow return to baseline, yet there is a lingering elevation in neural activity, an afterglow of danger. Their bodies are attempting to relax, but their minds are not. Unit 5 peeled off their own helmet, revealing a face equally tired but with that same unsettling spark in their eyes. "You felt that last one though, right? The one that almost got you." "Right here." Unit 5 tapped their own temple. "Felt the air move," heard the shrapnel hum. "Yeah," Unit 3 murmured, a faint smile playing on their lips. They ran a gloved finger over the small cut on their arm, feeling the raised skin, the slight sting. "That's the good stuff. Reminds you you're alive, you know, the close ones." The phantom itch wasn't just physical, it was an urge. A craving for the precise, razor-thin edge between existing and ceasing to exist, a strange, undeniable allure that pulsed through their veins even now, in the eerie quiet of the aftermath. Cathar, the lead xenobotanist, had ceased vibrating his sensory stalks. He was still. They seek this feeling, the fear, the pain, the proximity to their own termination. They don't simply endure it. They absorb it. They internalize it. And then they become restless without it. Humans, it seemed, didn't just survive the Deathworld. They carried it within them, the taste of cold iron, the roar of simulated battle, the phantom itch of a near miss. These weren't burdens, but strange, exhilarating trophies etched onto their very being. And the galaxy, watching, could only wonder if they'd ever truly be at peace without that constant, dangerous hum. The ship's external sensors were alight with a symphony of foreboding. Not the usual roars of a storm or the hiss of magma, but something far more insidious. Low-frequency seismic tremors, barely perceptible, pulsed from beneath the continental shelf. Oceanic pressure readings plummeted, indicating an unprecedented drawback of coastal waters. And carried on the unusually still air, a peculiar sound, a soft, metallic ringing, like 1,000 tiny bells chiming erratically, yet with an underlying sense of building urgency. The dauntless inquiry's prediction algorithm screamed, imminent, catastrophic tectonic shift, followed by a monumental tidal event. On the main view screen, a small human coastal settlement, huddled against the land, framed by a deceptively calm, receding sea. Wind chimes, hanging from every porch and tree branch, swayed in a strange, unseasonal breeze, their delicate ringing now amplifying the alien vessel's alarm. Humans moved about their routines, but the subtle shift in the environment was undeniable. Their geological and oceanic data indicate a CLASS-9 seismic event within the next standard cycle, followed by a probable tidal displacement wave of immense magnitude. Ambassador Zylar articulated, his optical sensors flickering with internal calculations. The ringing is atmospheric resonance, a pre-shock indicator. They are unaware of their impending doom. Suddenly, the screen focused on an elderly human sitting calmly on a porch, a steaming mug cradled in their gnarled hands. Their gaze was fixed on the strangely quiet retreating ocean. The wind chimes above their head clinked with increasing speed. A younger human jogged past, pausing to shout, "Crazy wind tonight, huh, Gramps? Makes the chimes sing." The older human merely nodded, a faint, almost wistful smile on their lips. "Aye, the sea's about to clear her throat, child." Cathar, the lead xenobotanist, recoiled. "Clear her throat?" The human interprets the prelude to utter destruction as a vocalization and acknowledges it with such placid acceptance. His multi-jointed digits tapped a frantic rhythm on his data slate. The local fauna, bird flocks and small ground creatures, were visibly agitated, fleeing inland in droves. Only the humans remained, seemingly unfazed. The subtle tremors intensified, a low hum beneath the ship's hull, a deep, guttural growl from the planet itself. The wind chimes now clanged with frantic desperation, a cacophony of metallic fear. The younger human, returning to their dwelling, glanced at the increasingly exposed seabed, strewn with stranded fish, and whistled softly. "Well, that's quite the low tide. Guess we won't need fishing boats for a bit." They began efficiently but calmly, moving potted plants from the porch indoors. Not fleeing, preparing for wetness. Commander Varrock extended a sensor probe, baffled. They heard the chimes. They felt the tremors. They saw the warning signs. Yet they responded not with panic, but with a strange, almost resigned familiarity. They were witnessing the planet prepare to shatter, and humans were simply observing its process. They didn't just endure the Deathworld. They listened to its ominous music, understood its violent intentions, and simply got ready for the show. Their stubborn refusal to yield, even to the planet's primal song of destruction, was utterly terrifyingly human. The silence, which had been so pregnant with foreboding, shattered. A low, guttural rumble clawed its way up from the Earth's core, growing in intensity until it became a deafening roar. The dauntless inquiry shuddered in orbit, its delicate sensors overloaded. Below, on the coastal settlement, the ground bucked and twisted with a violent, sickening lurch. The wind chimes, moments ago a frantic symphony, now simply ceased, torn from their moorings or silenced by the sheer concussive force. The very air tasted like dust and impending oblivion. "Seismic event, magnitude 9.2. Ambassador Zyler's optical sensors flared, his voice a strained crackle. "Tidal displacement wave initiated. Estimated arrival in 3 Earth minutes." On the main view screen, the human settlement became a blur of frantic motion, not panic, but instinct. The elderly human, Gramps, instinctively pushed himself from his porch chair, bracing against the doorframe, his face a mask of grim recognition. The younger human, who had been moving potted plants, dropped them with a crash, their eyes wide not with fear, but with a sudden sharp understanding. "Get inside, Gramps," they yelled, their voice barely audible over the groaning earth. Then the ocean arrived. It wasn't a wave. It was a liquid mountain. A crushing, churning wall of water, miles wide and hundreds of meters high, roared across the suddenly barren seabed. It swallowed the exposed fish, the distant ships, the very horizon. The sound was beyond thunder, beyond anything the alien vessel had ever registered. The primal scream of a planet reclaiming its shores. Impact imminent. Varrock's voice was strained, his mandibles clenched. The wave struck the coast with inconceivable force. Buildings disintegrated into splinters, trees were uprooted like weeds. The very landscape was reshaped in an instant. The view screen blurred with spray and debris, but the aliens kept their focus, tracking Gramps and the younger human. They were gone, swallowed by the churning maw. Then, a flicker, a hand, then an arm, broke the surface of the roiling brown torrent, desperately clinging to a bobbing fragment of what looked like a rooftop. It was the younger human, gasping for air, eyes wide and scanning the chaos. The water was frigid, filled with pulverizing debris, and its force was like a million invisible needles, pressing, tearing, chilling to the bone. Every muscle screamed. Every breath was a desperate fight against being submerged again. "Gramps!" The human coughed, spitting out brackish water, their voice raw with strain. "Gramps, where are you?" A moment later, An even more astonishing sight. Gramps, battered but conscious, was visible, entangled in a mesh of what looked like fishing nets, dragged along by the current. His face was pale, his eyes fixed, but he was clinging. He saw the younger human, and a faint, almost imperceptible nod passed between them. A shared understanding. "We are in this." Cathar. The xenobotanist could only stare. They are fighting the very ocean. They are enduring the full, unfiltered wrath of this death world, not with advanced technology, but with sheer, stubborn, physical will. They are not merely surviving, they are refusing to die politely. The humans were not fleeing. They were enduring. They were holding on. They were shouting into the chaos, not in despair, but in a primal cry of connection, of shared defiance. They faced the crushing pressure of a million needles, the overwhelming power of a death world's tantrum, and still, they clung to life and to each other with a terrifying, beautiful stubbornness. The ship's external sensors, having cataloged the raw fury of Earth's elements and the engineered chaos of human conflict, now registered a new, insidious atmospheric condition. Not the thick, metallic tang of recycled air, nor the acrid burn of volcanic ash. This was thinner, colder, carrying a whisper that prickled the alien vessel's delicate, long-range auditory pickups. A pervasive, ghostly sensation of a breeze, not violent, but unnerving, seemed to seep into the very fabric of their monitoring systems, carrying with it the scent of decay, old wood, and something profoundly desolate. On the main viewer, a spectral landscape emerged, a human settlement, once vibrant, now a skeleton. Buildings stood like hollowed-out eyesores, their windows shattered, their roofs collapsed. Rust-colored dust coated everything, shimmering under a weak, indifferent sun. The wind, that omnipresent, ghostly breeze, whistled through broken panes and empty doorways, creating a mournful, echoing symphony. Warnings of structural instability, unpredictable debris falls, and extreme psychological isolation flashed across the monitors. Their biometrics indicate elevated sensory perception, a heightened awareness of sound and ambient temperature shifts, yet no corresponding increase in fear response. Ambassador Xylar articulated, his optical sensors narrowing. The auditory signatures alone would induce severe anxiety in most sentient species. This place is designed to unnerve. Two humans, clad in thick practical clothing, moved through the ruins. Their footsteps crunched on broken glass and fallen plaster. The wind tugged at their jackets, sighing through the derelict structures. One human, a female, paused by a teetering archway, its stone groaning under the unseen pressure of the wind. A sudden, sharp crack echoed from above, sending a shower of loose pebbles cascading down. She flinched, but then let out a dry, mirthless laugh. "Just the ghosts having a dance party, Alex," she muttered, a faint shiver running through her, not entirely from the cold. Her voice, thin in the vast quiet, carried a strange mix of unease and exhilaration. "Wouldn't be a proper ghost town without a little falling debris, would it?" Her male companion, Alex, peered into the black maw of a collapsed stairwell. The wind seemed to howl directly from its depths, a deep, guttural moan. "Don't say that, Jess. You know how much this place spooks me. Every creak, every whisper, it feels like something's watching." He said it with a nervous laugh, but his eyes, darting from shadow to shadow, held a flicker of genuine apprehension. Yet he didn't retreat. He pushed a rusted metal door open further, stepping into the darkness. Cathar, the lead xenobotanist, had retreated into a tight ball, his multi-jointed digits clenching. They are voluntarily entering a place engineered for sensory deprivation and psychological distress. They are acknowledging the ghosts, the latent fear, the sense of unseen presence, and yet they are actively seeking them out. They find entertainment in their own primal unease. Jess followed Alex into the gloom, her boots echoing hollowly. The air inside was colder, heavier, smelling of damp stone and something ancient. A forgotten banner, half rotted, stirred in a phantom current, making her jump. All right, she conceded, a slight catch in her voice. Maybe this one's got a few extra night residents. But think of the stories, Alex. She pulled out her ubiquitous flat device, angling it into the shadowy interior, capturing the decaying beauty and the chilling atmosphere. Commander Vrock extended a sensor probe, baffled. Humans didn't just survive the Deathworld. They sought out its most desolate, unnerving corners, not for survival, but for the thrill of a chilling story. For the strange awe of decay, they embraced the phantom itch of fear, the ghostly caress of a breeze that whispered of forgotten lives and imminent collapse. The ship's external sensors, usually barraged by the expansive chaos of Earth's surface, now focused on something impossibly small, impossibly dark. Not the vastness of space, or the open fury of a storm. This was a place where the planet closed in, where rock pressed in on all sides, where light died and sound was muffled to a dull thrum. The air samples, pulled from deep within the Earth's crust, hinted at absolute stillness, damp decay, and the metallic tang of ancient minerals. Warnings of extreme pressure, oxygen depletion, and potential collapse pulsed across the main console. On the main view screen, a narrow tunnel, barely wide enough for a human, stretched into absolute blackness. Headlamp beams cut through the oppressive gloom, illuminating glistening rock walls, sharp edges, and the persistent drip of unseen water. Two humans, Subject Gamma 9 and Subject Zeta 2, were crawling, squeezing, inching their way forward. The weight of kilometers of rock pressed down on them, a silent, crushing force. Their biometrics show elevated heart rates, but it's a controlled stress response, consistent with intense physical exertion, not panic, Ambassador Xylar articulated, his optical sensors flickering in disbelief. Their confined position would induce extreme claustrophobia in 97% of known sentient species, yet their vocalizations indicate focus and a strange, almost serene calm. Gamma 9, a female, grunted, her breath rasping in the tight space. She pushed her pack ahead of her, the rough stones scraping against her helmet. "All right, Zeta, watch your left shoulder here." It's a tight one, but the passage opens up just a few meters beyond. Her voice was strained but steady, echoing faintly in the claustrophobic confines. Water dripped, a slow, incessant plink into a puddle somewhere unseen. Zeta 2, the male, followed. His movements precise, deliberate. His face, illuminated by his headlamp, was smeared with mud and streaked with sweat. But his eyes held a quiet intensity. "Got it, Gamma. Just gotta remember to breathe out before the squeeze." He took a deep, controlled breath, then exhaled slowly, flattening himself against the cold, damp rock, before pushing through a particularly narrow choke point. The sound of his suit rubbing against stone was loud in the alien's monitors. Cathar, the lead xenobotanist, had retreated into a tight ball, his multi-jointed digits clenching. They are voluntarily entering a subterranean environment that mirrors a burial chamber. They seek out these constricted spaces, these geological tombs, for exploration. They describe it as peaceful, challenging, a place to truly feel alive. Gamma 9 finally broke through into a slightly wider chamber, still small, still utterly dark, but allowing her to turn. She leaned against a rough rock face, chest heaving, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and their own exertion. She clicked off her headlamp for a moment, plunging them both into total, absolute darkness. "You okay in there, Zeta?" she whispered, her voice surprisingly soft, a thread in the immense, pressing silence. "Just fine, Gamma." Zeta 2's voice came back, a quiet assurance from the blackness. "Feels cozy almost, like the world can't touch you down here." Commander Vrock extended a sensor probe, baffled. They had sought out the most constricting, crushing places on the Deathworld, willingly sealing themselves in. Not in despair, but in a strange, inexplicable pursuit of a profound quiet, a visceral challenge, a unique sense of being utterly, intimately present. They found a peculiar comfort in the very maw of the earth, transforming a geological coffin into a strange, defiant sanctuary, The ship's external sensors registered an environment utterly devoid of warmth, light, and almost all atmospheric movement. Not the crushing pressure of deep rock or the raw energy of a storm, this was a different kind of death. The air samples, pulled from kilometers beneath a desolate mountain range, carried the damp chill of unbreathing stone, a faint mineral tang, and the heavy, still scent of millennia of undisturbed silence. Warnings of extreme hypothermia, atmospheric stagnation, and a pervasive, existential emptiness pulsed across the main console. On the main view screen, a cavern of colossal proportions unfolded. It was a space so vast that the beams of human headlamps struggled to find its far walls, disappearing into a seemingly infinite blackness. Water, icy cold, dripped with monotonous slowness from unseen stalactites, echoing with a haunting resonance in the oppressive quiet. This was Earth's deep, cold heart, a place where time itself felt frozen. Their core temperatures are dropping at a concerning rate, despite their insulated coverings. Ambassador Xylar articulated, his optical sensors flickering with internal calculations. The air is breathable but barely circulating, and the psychological impact of such profound, unyielding darkness, coupled with the echoing silence, should induce severe distress. Two humans, clad in thick, specialized suits, moved through the cavern. Their headlamps cut through the inky blackness, revealing grotesque rock formations, slick with perpetual moisture. Their footsteps, precise and careful, were swallowed almost instantly by the vastness. One human, a male, paused, aiming his headlamp up at an impossibly high, dark ceiling, his breath plumed into thick, white clouds. "Imagine how long this took to form, Sarah," he whispered, his voice hushed, reverent, swallowed by the cavern's immensity. "Just drip by agonizing drip. Uncounted ages, just for this." Sarah, the female, shivered visibly, pulling her thick jacket tighter. "Yeah, imagine. Feels like the whole world's pressing down, but in slow motion. Makes you feel small, doesn't it?" Her voice held a note of awe, but also a tremor of something deeper, a recognition of their own fragile existence against such geological might. Yet, she did not suggest retreat. She pulled out her flat device, not for a selfie, but to record a panoramic video, capturing the impossible scale. Cathar, the lead xenobotanist, had ceased vibrating his sensory stalks. He was utterly still. They seek out the most lifeless, inert places, not for resources, not for shelter, but for perspective. They are willingly immersing themselves in a geological void, a monument to non-life, for introspection. A sudden, sharp crack echoed from somewhere far above, the sound amplifying and reverberating through the cavern for agonizing seconds before fading back into the deep quiet. A small cascade of pebbles bounced off the male human's helmet. He flinched, then calmly adjusted his grip on his pack. "Just the old girl stretching, I guess," he murmured, a faint, almost wry smile on his lips. Commander Varrock extended a sensor probe, baffled. Humans didn't just survive the damp chill of unbreathing stone. They sought it out, not in terror, but in a strange, compelling curiosity. They embraced its chilling beauty, its crushing silence, its subtle geological threats. They found a unique resonance within the inert, dead heart of their planet, a reflection of something stubborn and undeniably alive within themselves. They didn't just endure the profound stillness. They found a strange, haunting comfort in it. The ship's deep-scan seismographs registered a new, profoundly unsettling anomaly. Not the sharp crack of shifting rock from before, but a low, rhythmic thrum, barely above the threshold of perception, emanating from kilometers beneath the cavern where the humans now explored. It was a pulse, slow and immense, like the heartbeat of something ancient and inconceivably vast. The air samples pulled from the cavern's depths carried the same damp chill, the mineral tang, but now infused with a heavy, almost sacred stillness. Warnings of unimaginable geological forces and existential insignificance pulsed across the main console. On the main view screen, the colossal cavern deepened further, headlamp beams now seeming utterly swallowed by the gloom. Sarah and her male companion, their breath pluming in the frigid air, moved with a newfound reverence. The icy water, dripping from above, now seemed to fall into a vast, unseen reservoir below, its echoes carrying a hollow, booming quality. This was not merely Earth's cold heart. This felt like the very maw of time itself. The infrasonic readings indicate a massive, dormant geological stress point directly beneath their position, Ambassador Zylar articulated, his optical sensors whirring with frantic calculations. This thrumming signifies immense, restrained energy. One false move, one structural instability, and they would be crushed into molecular dust. The humans rounded a massive column of stone, its surface slick with eons of mineral deposits, and halted. Before them lay a chasm, so wide and deep that their headlamps couldn't illuminate its bottom. From its abyssal depths, a faint, almost subliminal vibration emanated. The air here was even colder, heavy with a preternatural quiet. Sarah slowly reached out, her gloved hand touching the sheer rock face of the chasm. She closed her eyes for a moment, head tilted, as if listening. "Can you feel that, Mark?" she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "That hum. It's like the whole mountain's breathing, just incredibly slowly." Mark, the male, knelt by the edge, peering into the inky blackness. His headlamp beam was devoured instantly. He too reached out, placing his palm flat against the cold, wet stone. A shiver ran through his frame, but it wasn't from the cold, or fear. "Yeah," he murmured, his voice hushed with awe. "It's like the earth is alive, just asleep." He leaned closer, trying to discern the source of the faint, rhythmic vibration. "It's massive, ancient. What if it woke up?" He chuckled softly. A nervous, almost giddy sound that vanished instantly into the void. Cathar, the lead xenobotanist, had ceased vibrating his sensory stalks. He was utterly rigid. They are touching a geological entity capable of planetary reshaping. They are acknowledging its immense power, its capacity for their annihilation, and they are not fleeing. They are communing with it. Sarah, eyes still closed, smiled faintly. "Then we'd have a hell of a story, wouldn't we?" She opened her eyes, gazing into the vast, lightless chasm. She took out her flat device and for the first time did not take a picture. Instead, she just held it, letting the microphone capture the profound silence, the faint hum, the echoing drip. Commander Varrock extended a sensor probe, baffled beyond measure. Humans sought out the most inert, most crushing, most existentially terrifying places, not for conquest but for contemplation. They found beauty in the ancient pulse of a sleeping god, knowing full well it could awaken and erase them without a second thought. They didn't just endure the profound stillness in the cold, unbreathing stone. They listened to its heartbeat, and in doing so found a strange, defiant affirmation of their own fleeting, stubborn existence. The ship's external sensors, after months of screaming warnings and alarming biometrics, now registered something unsettlingly benign. Not the crackle of bioelectricity, nor the growl of magma. This was a place of regulated temperature, filtered air, and carefully manicured flora. A pervasive quiet hummed through the atmosphere, broken only by the chirping of small, domesticated creatures and the faint murmur of human voices. Warnings of extreme comfort, utter predictability, and a pervasive lack of asterisk stimulus pulsed across the main console. This was, by galactic standards, a zone of absolute safety. On the main view screen, a structure of uniform design, surrounded by neatly trimmed green, came into focus. Inside, a human female sat on a soft surface, illuminated by a gentle, artificial light. Her posture was relaxed, her breathing even. A small, furry creature purred on her lap, occasionally nudging her hand. She was engrossed in a flat, luminous screen, her optical sensors fixed on moving images. There was no immediate threat, no looming danger, just peace. Their physiological markers indicate complete absence of adrenaline production, reduced cortisol levels, and a cerebral activity pattern consistent with passive entertainment. Ambassador Zylar articulated, his optical sensors flickering with profound confusion. This environment lacks all the stressors that, according to our previous observations, define their existence. Are they recuperating from a prolonged period of intense struggle? Suddenly, the human female sighed, a sound of almost profound weariness. She stretched, her limbs extending languidly, and then set the luminous screen aside. She looked around the comfortable, unchanging room. Her gaze lingered on a framed image of a jagged, smoking mountain. A flicker of something. Longing? Crossed her features. She ran a hand through her hair. "Bored, Luna?" she murmured to the purring creature, her voice soft, almost melancholic. "Me too." Cathar, the lead xenobotanist, vibrated his sensory stalks, his analysis algorithm spiraling. They actively seek comfort, yet their psyche appears to register boredom in its presence. The absence of the Deathworld's threats does not bring contentment. It appears to bring a subtle form of agitation, a yearning for the very chaos that should compel their flight. The human then rose, moved to a window, and gazed out at the perfectly manicured garden, the quiet street, the predictable sky. A faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through her. She tapped her fingers idly on the window pane, a small, restless gesture. It was a phantom itch, the aliens now understood. The ghost of a thrill that wasn't there. Commander Varrock extended a sensor probe. Baffled. This was the most perplexing observation yet. Humans, when removed from the Deathworld's embrace, didn't appear grateful or relieved. They seemed incomplete. The deafening silence of safety was not a sanctuary. It was a vacuum, a void where the roar of the Deathworld used to be. And in that void, a strange, profound human restlessness emerged, a testament to a species so uniquely forged by chaos that its absence became its own peculiar form of suffering. The ship's external sensors, having cycled through Earth's volatile extremes and bizarre human responses, now broadcast a final, perplexing scene. The dauntless inquiry was preparing for its jump, its mission of xenological classification complete. Below, the human world continued its strange, unpredictable dance. The atmosphere was calm, the sun bright, the local environment utterly devoid of immediate threat. Yet, the observation deck hummed with a different kind of tension, a quiet, analytical dread from the alien crew. On the main view screen, the human female from the previous observation sat in her comfortable, safe dwelling. The small, furry creature, Luna, still purred on her lap, but her eyes, though fixed on a new luminous screen, held a distant, almost haunted quality. The images flickering across her device were not peaceful. They were of surging waves, of dizzying cliff faces of massive, toothy predators. She wasn't merely watching. Her fingers twitched. Her breathing subtly hitched during particularly dangerous moments, a phantom echo of the very thrills she had once experienced. Her biometrics confirm a resurgence of low-level stress hormones, despite the benign environment. Ambassador Xylar articulated, his optical sensors tracing the human's subtle reactions. She is actively re-experiencing simulated dangers. This suggests an internal imperative, a biological need for the very sensation of peril. The female human sighed again, a deeper, more profound exhalation this time. She touched the image of a human surfing a colossal wave, a wistful, almost melancholic gesture. "Just not the same, is it, Luna?" she whispered to her pet, a soft tremor in her voice. "Doesn't quite get the spray in your face, or the kick in your gut." Cathar, the lead xenobotanist, had ceased vibrating his sensory stalks entirely. He looked at Commander Varrock, then at the ambassador. They are like an organism that has lost a vital limb, yet continues to feel its presence, a phantom limb of a lost world. They are so intrinsically woven into the fabric of their death world that its absence leaves them incomplete. Commander Varrock accessed the final summation report. Hundreds of thousands of data points, countless hours of observation. Humans hiking volcanoes for sport, surfing hurricanes for exhilaration, befriending apex predators for a photo opportunity, fighting microscopic enemies within their own bodies, challenging gravity, conquering the void, enduring planetary cataclysms, and, most baffling of all, seeking out simulated versions of all these dangers when peace prevailed. "The conclusion is irrefutable," Commander Varrock stated, his voice a low hum of pure, scientific bewilderment. "They are not merely resilient, they are defined by the struggle. Their evolution on a Class Omega Deathworld did not merely grant them survival traits. It forged a species that is not only tolerant of danger, but seemingly craves it, internalizes it, and becomes restless without it. They evolved not despite the Deathworld, but because of it. The ship engaged its FTL drive, a final, silent hum before it vanished into the void. The aliens left Earth, convinced that humanity was not a miracle of careful adaptation or logical progression. They were an evolutionary accident, perhaps even a cosmic joke, forged in fire and chaos, shaped by pure, unadulterated spite against a universe that dared to try and kill them. And the most terrifying truth of all? They seemed to asterisks like it.